Hello to everyone and welcome on this YouTube channel. So this is tutorial number 11 of our training on C programming language. So the aim of this video is to discuss about integer division and division with a float, or division with a decimal number. I'm doing this video because there are certain remarks I want to mention here because it's very important. So many students are doing mistake on that, or they are confused about that. Now, so generally what happens is, if I declare a value as an integer, let us say in sum, then I declare two other values, let us say in a, comma, and b, If you do sum equals to a divided by b, there's no problem. What's happening here is a is an integer, b is an integer. What you're supposed to retain is, when you're doing integer division, your result is an integer. In this case, since I'm affecting this integer to another integer variable, there's no problem. But imagine that here you declare your sum as a float. You declare sum as float, and you come and say sum equals to this. Don't think that if your a is maybe 5, your b is maybe 2. Normally the result here is what? 2.5, right? Don't think that because sum is float, he's going to store the 2.5, because float is used to store decimal number 0. Please remove that from your mind. Never forget that when you are doing integer division, the result is an integer. Meaning that if you are doing 5 divided by 2, since 5 is integer and 2 is integer, the result here will not give you 2.5, but the result here will give you 2. Even if you are affecting the result to a floating variable, you still have 2 here. Since sum is a floating variable, you have but 2.0, something like that. You see, so it's very important. The question that you ask yourself is, okay, sir, when we are doing division, how are we going to do now to obtain a decimal number? Now, generally, for you to obtain your result as a decimal number, or let me just say your result as a floating number, one of these numbers that you are using for the division must be a float. Very important. Meaning either the numerator is a float and the denominator is an integer, or the denominator is a float, the numerator is an integer, or both are float. So these are the only cases that can make you have a decimal number, or let me say have a float. So we are going to practice that. Very important. So let me take the different cases. So inside my code, look at something. I'm going to declare a variable here called in, let me just call that sum. Okay, let me just say a, in sum, in, let me just say a, comma, b. Now, to make it very easy, let me just declare another variable as a float. That variable float, I'm going to call it maybe, I don't know, let me just call it n. Very good. Now, look at something. So I need a printf to display because we need to see what we are doing. So printf, So here I'm going to display the variable sum and n. So here I'm going to say, let me just start with n. N is equals to, remember that n here is what? Is a float, right? So the format specifier is percentage %f. And you go out of the double quote, you write comma, you write your n, semicolon. Now, the next, so at this level, I'm not explaining this type of thing because from all the previous video, in fact, this normally should not be a problem for you. So the next, I want to display what sum. Sum is an integer, so percentage %z. So you write sum equals to, So remember that what I'm writing here is not the name of the variable, this is just a text, The name of the variable is after the comma, sum. Nice. So this is my printf here. Now look at something. Let me start with sum. If I say sum, or before doing that, let me initialize some values in the variable a and b because we'll be using them to divide. Okay, let us say a is equals to, remember that a and b are an integer. So let me say a is equals to 5, semicolon, and b is equals to, let me just take something like 2, semicolon. Nice. Now here, let me say n is equals to a divided by what? By b. Semicolon. Now here, come and say sum equals to a divided by b. Normally the first one, a divided by b, is what? 5 divided by 2. Normally the result is 2.5, and you are expecting n to store 2.5 because n is a float, but this is not how things work. Since a and b are an integer, the result that will be stored in n is 2 and not 2.5, because integer division will always give you an integer. Are we there? Now for this one here, a divided by b. Now here it's true that I'm sure you are expecting to have 2 because sum is an integer, so it's going to store just the integer part. But you'll be surprised that even n is just storing the integer part, whereas n is float. So Control S, let me execute this code. Good. Are you seeing that? I'm having n equals to 2. I'm having sum also equals to 2. Good. So now that is why. So now to solve this problem, remember that for you to have a float, or for you to store a decimal number when you are doing division, one of the numbers that you are manipulating must be decimal, or both of them must be decimal. And how to handle that problem? So let us say I want to change a to a decimal number, whereas a initially was an integer. Good. I'm going to do what we call casting. So how to cast? To cast, you just go before a, you put your bracket. You want to cast it to float, so you write float like this. Control S. Good. He's going to change the value of a. So normally a here is what? 5. So here he's going to put with 5.0 and not 5, because you know that 5.0 is already a float, right? Good. By the time you have a decimal point, it is considered as float. So if you execute this now, you see that n we have is 2.5 normally. Are you seeing n is having 2.5? He's just adding the 0 because by default float is storing 6 decimal place. Let us say we want our answer in 1 decimal place. You go at the level of the percentage f. After percentage, you just add dot. The values that follow after the dot now represent the number of decimal place you want. If I want 1 decimal place, I just put percentage dot 1 before writing f. You see, if you save this normally, you have it to 1 decimal place. So this is how things work. You see, 2.5. If you want it to 2 decimal place, just add percentage dot 2f. You have it to 2 decimal places. Don't forget that, please. But by G4, if you don't precise anything, it's to 6 decimal places. Good. I see how I've casted this. Very, 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 very nice. Very nice. Now let me take another case. Another case is because here I'm doing cast using float like this, because what I'm having here is a variable. Imagine that here I'm not using variable, but I'm having directly n divided by 2. Good. How are you going to cast this? Do you think you come again here and put bracket float? No. It's not necessary. In this case now, 5 divided by 2, just come at the level of 5 and you just add 0.0. Because we know that 5.0 is the same as what? As 5, you see. So the fact that we are adding 0.0 is because we want the compiler to consider this as a float number and not an integer. Good. So that the result should come out as 2.5. Are you getting the point? Good. So generally, when you are doing division and that you have a hard value like this, meaning you have a value that is not inside a variable, just go to that variable and add .0. If that value is an integer, add .0. But if that value is a float already, there's no problem. But if the value is an integer, add .0, so that the result that you obtain here will be the correct value, in fact. Because sometimes people are doing calculation, you don't care about the result. You just print and you go. You see, but things like that, these are details that you must know. Very important. Good. I'm showing it because there are some exercises in fact where we'll be using this, so don't worry. But note this, very, very important, because surely you'll fall on this one day. So this all for this video. If you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a comment and like the video. Very important. If you have any question, ask in the comment section. So see you in the next video. The next video, in fact, we are starting serious thing, control structure. So we are going to study the sequential control structure. In fact, sequential control structure is what we are doing since. We are going to study the selection control structure, meaning that the if-else condition, the switch case, all this type of thing. Good. The multiple if. Then we are going to study iterative control structure, everything concerning loops, for loop, while loop, do while loop. So don't worry, I'm going to simplify all those things. Good. So see you in the next video.